Hey, WBSE and Whiskey Network. I'm Chad Cadden. Joining me tonight are Bill Varnell and Mindy Schwartz, the editor-in-chief for the Whiskey Network magazine. If you haven't subscribed, please do support WBSE. Welcome to our final roundtable and virtual tasting event. We have a great show planned tonight with some very special guests. Starting out with Greg Schwartz, director of the film The Water of Life, producer Alphonse the Fonz Palima, the Fonz. Also joining us tonight, well, this afternoon, is president of Imepx Beverages, Sam Filmus, and his Mid-Atlantic regional manager, Jared Card. And last but certainly not least, are GlenAllechie, International Sales Director, David Keir, and the amazing and maybe infamous Billy Walker himself. Please join me in welcoming and raise a glass to Billy Walker and our outstanding guest. Cheers, everybody.
Yes, cheers. Cilantro.
We also like to welcome all of our WBSE members. If you were lucky enough to obtain a kit, good job. So we're going to be sampling 4 different products. So pour them now if you get a chance. If you have any questions, please post them on the live video feed and we will try to get to them as soon as time permits. So Mindy, you want to start us off?
Yeah. Before we get into tonight's discussion, Greg is going to treat us to a clip from his film to set the stage for tonight's event. Greg?
All right, here we go. Thanks, Mindy.
In 2016, 4 years after Bruichladdich was purchased for a then record £58 million, Billy Walker's ownership group sold their Glendronach, Benriach and Glenglassaugh distilleries to Jack Daniel's parent company, Brown-Forman, for an eye-watering £285 million, or nearly $400 million. With that, he's bringing all his kind of loyal fans that have been following his journey for years and years and years.
Billy made a second fortune. And what did he do? Does he sit back and just go to the football? Nope. Within months, he buys GlenAllachie Distillery.
We're really lucky. We've lived through a generation of where a lot of things have happened. We've been allowed to be involved in this industry, which, you know, and I'm sure Jim would say the same, this isn't a job. I mean, this is serious fun.
These old whiskey boys, they're very reluctant to give up.
At the end of the day, they want a successful business, they want a good whiskey, they want to be proud of the name. After the sale, Brown-Forman brought in Rachel Berry to be their master blender.
She's worked her way around the industry, she's made quite significant impact and created real lasting legacy in all the companies that she's worked for.
Rachel has so much experience behind her, but what's really lovely to see is how she's just embraced Glendronach, Benriach and Glenglassaugh. The expressions that have come from them during her short tenure so far have been extraordinary.
With an existing distillery that has experimented a lot, you've got an amazing colour palette to work with, and you just build on that.
Still determined to change the way spirits are made, Mark Rainier went to Ireland, to Waterford, to continue his terroir-driven single malt whisky experiments.
There you go.
Thank you, Greg, for that preview of the film, The Water of Life. Can you please tell us about what we just watched and how our members can gain access to view the entire film?
Absolutely. Yeah, so that was a scene from near the end of our film. There was a couple of little moments about the sort of where are they now? And people can see the film right now, and there's on-demand tickets through our partnership with WBSE. If people go to wateroflifefilm.com/partners/WBSE, they can get tickets and learn a little bit about, that's, like I said, that's kind of close to the end of the film, and that's really, you can learn a lot about the journeys that took these people to where they wound up.
All right, thanks, Greg. Now we'd like to introduce the GlenAllachie Master Distiller, Billy Walker. Billy's one of the most recognizable characters and respected master blenders within the Scotch whiskey industry. During his almost 50-year career, he's been responsible for creating award-winning whiskeys and has been involved in the acquisition and resurrection of several single malt distilleries. After selling the Benriach Distillery Company, Billy wasn't quite ready to retire, so he quickly assembled a team to start a new journey with the GlenAllachie Distillery, with the simple aim of making great whiskey and having fun painting with the color of wood. Please welcome Master Distiller, the amazing Billy Walker. Billy, we want to thank you for joining us today, and please tell us about the GlenAllachie and why you chose this next step in your career.
Oh, what a question. Look, it's important to recognize that when we were the lucky custodians of the Benriach company, which included Benriach Distillery, Glendronach and Glenalke, it wasn't really a welcome decision for me to sell the business. There were a number of external issues with my very, very good partners that actually kind of corralled us into engaging and finally selling the business. And there were many kind of stories left unfinished as far as I was concerned. And so recognizing that it's really, really important to get up in the morning with a purpose, we very quickly decided that, listen, we need to go and find something that we can engage with, something that we were familiar with, but importantly, a distillery that was flying under the radar, had never really been allowed to deliver and express its own personality. And so we had a conversation with Chivas Pernod. We had a very good working relationship with them, ongoing and in the past. And the discussion continued, and it emerged that there was the possibility of buying, or purchasing, acquiring GlenAllachie. And it was the whiskey, not necessarily the distillery, but the whiskey I had been really quite familiar with from my Scotch whiskey blending days. And I knew that it wasn't a shy whiskey. It was quite a muscular whiskey, and most importantly, it had never been exposed to the market. So we were starting with a blank sheet, and that was, from my point of view, that was the kind of formula that worked previously for the team, and certainly would work for the team that we were going to assemble. The discussions with Chivas were really pretty well straightforward. We were dealing with the then managing director was a charming Frenchman called Laurent Lacassagne. And while things didn't exactly go totally smoothly, in the bigger picture, they went very smoothly. And so I think on the 3rd of October in 2017, we completed. And then we had the opportunity then to go in and really start thinking and working exactly how we wanted this new experience to evolve.
Okay, thank you.
So Billy, once again, thank you for being with us today. Is there anything in particular that you look for when selecting barrels?
You know, it's almost impossible to answer that question quickly. But the reality is that from my experience, that as long as you make good spirit, you're working with good spirit, the quality of the wood will deliver something like 70 to 75% of the rounded end product. So the question you ask is an extremely important question. So we're constantly looking at the provenance of wood. We're always looking at, for example, fresh American barrels coming in, and that's a good start for the new fill. But, you know, from our experience over the last 20, 30, 40 years, we have known that there are many different styles of wood out there, not just in terms of finishes,
that these different styles will bring to the whiskey, but the different genuses of the oak, Spanish oak, European oak, American oak, even within American oak, we're looking at the qualities that things like Chinkapin oak and Orzac oak can bring to the final product. There are many, many things going on, and there's a lot of chemistry that's determining what is it we want to actually buy, how do we want to use these barrels, what can it deliver for us? And in truth, we've got a lot of experience historically. We know the things that the cask can deliver. We know the things that the wine casks, the virgin casks, the different provenance of virgin casks. But the experiments continue, and we'll probably talk a little bit more about we're evolving into the use of virgin oak, and we're looking at, of course, American oak, we're looking at Chinkapin oak, Orzac oak, we're looking at Mizunara oak, we're looking at Russian oak, we're looking at Hungarian oak. And I can tell you that our early kind of assessment of all these small and sometimes medium and large trials are proving to be not only interesting, but fantastically interesting.
So, Billy, the next question I have is the age of whiskey a factor in how wood influences it, since you're already talking about wood?
You know, I'm not sure who asked that question, but again, it's a really, really searching question, because in truth, there are many, many parts to that question that could be asked. The first one is, yes, the age is important in terms of how it interfaces with the wood. But part of that is that during the process of maturation and aging, the strength of the spirit is progressively falling. And as it's falling, the solution characteristics of the whiskey is changing. So it's then entering the wood and extracting different kinds of soluble characteristics from the wood. So not only is the age really important because it drives a lower strength over a period of time, in many ways, it's the strength of the spirit as it's progressing through maturation that's actually really, really important in the process.
Okay, Sam?
Thank you, Bill. And Billy, you partially answered Chad's and Billy's questions, but that would cover my question, but I still want to ask you, a lot of distilleries and distillers disagree on a lot of things. One thing that they're all kind of in agreement is the fact that wood plays a huge role as to how whiskey comes out. Before it goes to the wood, you have this longest, or one of the longest, or probably the longest fermentation time in the industry, and some other techniques that you use to make sure that new make is great. But then if you put it in a bad wood, then you get a bad whiskey. My question to you is, what kind of criteria do you use in your wood management that sets you apart from others?
I need to choose my words very carefully, Sam, not to sound conceited. I think that we have created challenges for a lot of our competitors to actually deliver a lot of the things that we're doing. And I think we originated a lot of the wood choices, a lot of the directions that we've taken the whiskey in. I don't think we stand alone. There's a lot of creative people in the industry, and particularly probably some of the younger blenders who are less constrained by history. And one very important thing that works in our favor is that we are building a brand. We are not defending a legacy brand. So we can be brave, and we can be brave in terms of some of the decisions we're making in terms of wood choices and the kind of end product we're hoping to deliver, whether it's in 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe even 10 years. So perhaps we have more latitude than some of the more traditional and brand-driven companies.
Thank you.
Small follow-up to that. Do you believe that you're more focused on wood management than some of the other distilleries?
I think the answer is yes, but maybe again, I have to couch that by saying that other companies may be growing to be, but I can tell you we are obsessed with wood management. It is a classical story. You make good spirit and you put it into bad wood, you get bad spirit. If you make good spirit and you put it into average wood, you'll get average spirit. If you make good spirit and you put it into spectacular wood, you've got a really good chance of having a spectacular end product.
Can I ask a quick follow-up to that? Billy, when you're distilling, do you distill with a wood or certain wood types in mind, or is that the chicken and egg? You know, I realize right now you have to go the other way because the whiskey's already aging. You know, when you guys bought the distillery, but when you're distilling now.
Yeah, I think when we're distilling now, Greg, that we are conscious of the direction we want to take the whiskey in once it's in the wood. You know, we're old enough, and this is one of the benefits. There are not many benefits of age, but one of the benefits of age in this industry is that you have long-term knowledge of how different casks will interface with the whiskey. You know how long it will take to get to the sweet spot that you're looking for in terms of the secondary maturation. Yeah, we're constantly looking. We're looking for the spirit to be balanced and bold. And if we get to that point, we know that there's a good chance then the next few years, we know at what point we will reach the sweet spot for each of these categories of wood styles.
Thank you.
We okay?
Yeah, Bill, who's up? What next?
Let me just jump in there, Billy. When the guys are asking questions about wood and what differentiates you, and it may be easier for me to answer than yourself. And again, picking words carefully regarding competitors, etc. Billy, you own GlenAllachie. You hold purse strings. You pick the casks. There is no accountant or whatever in the mix. There's no head office controlling budgets, etc. So I think maybe we have no constraints, and I know it's maybe a little bit harder for you to say that, but that's certainly my perception, is that there's no constraints. I mean, I think the wood budget this year is something like $2 million, which for a company our size is absolutely phenomenal. And I think that maybe, Greg, I think it was yourself or Sam that asked what differentiates us from other companies. I think that might be one thing. The man that owns the company is the man that is picking and buying the casks. And on that note, I'll go back on mute.
So, and of course, Billy, I'm the one that gets to ask you this question. And I noticed you're not at the distillery, so all of your casks that are your babies are not listening. And I'm just curious, do you have a favorite GlenAllachie expression and why that is? And as a second part to that, I can imagine you occasionally get tired of drinking whiskey. It is something that does happen. So when you're not drinking whiskey, what does Billy like to sit down and enjoy a nice glass of?
Answering the second question first, quite a lot. but look, in terms of the various expressions we produce, I'm not sure that I can say I have favorites. But if I'm being honest, I think as we have traveled this journey and things have evolved, our intention was always to give the GlenAllachie name and the GlenAllachie personality was to give it a fairly rich sherry environment and character. So I would have to say, I think the 15-year-old was the first one really to fulfill the kind of quality I was looking for. I have to say now, though, that the 12-year-old is absolutely stunning now. The 10-year-old takes itself into a different world. It's cask strength. And the 18, the 21, the 25 are relatively limited, and they can vary a little bit in terms of cask choice. But again, the direction in terms of quality, I was saying the other night, well, somebody else was, what was I drinking? 2 nights ago, I was drinking the 21-year-old, which is really a bit of a dream, actually. So, favourites, I'm not sure. What else would I drink? What's the alternative to GlenAllachie? Look, I love wine. Wine is a dangerous drink for me. But I also have in my mind, I believe that the next big thing, certainly in Europe, and it may be already big in the United States, is going to be rum. And that there's going to be a curious and inquisitive consumer will start researching into rum, and the journey will begin again, and it will be built through the routes to market where people who have knowledge of the category will actually be the ambassadors for the brand. So yeah, I think I'm comfortable drinking rum. I'm obsessively drinking wine sometimes when I'm not drinking GlenAllachie.
Thank you, Billy. And I'm glad you said sherry as well, because if you didn't say that a sherried GlenAllachie was your favorite, I would be disappointed.
Me too.
Alphonse, you're up.
Hi, Billy. So I got one that's maybe on a different side. I mean, we know that wood is so much so important, but what else can you tell our viewers that has an influence on the flavor of your whiskey?
Look, the first imperative is to make good spirits. So you have to go right back to the basics, and that's the choice of malted barley. What is the strain? What particular varietal we're using at any one time? Then there's the milling process to make sure that the grind is in the right mix, that you're getting the right kind of balance when you're mashing and getting into the mash tun. Of course, managing the various temperatures and not overcooking anything. And then getting into the fermentation stage. Really, from our point of view, as soon as we bought the distillery, this distillery worked hard for the previous owners. It's capable of doing around 4.2 million litres of alcohol. And our immediate imperative was to cut back production by almost 75%. And allow us to move the period of fermentation from probably 52 to 56 hours to somewhere between 140 to 160, sometimes 180 hours. And indeed, in the last couple of months, we've done 2 or 3 experiments doing 500-hour fermentations and separating these, once they're distilled, separating these and seeing how these, in fact, will perform in the cask. But one of the reasons for doing very long fermentation is that we get the benefit of full term in terms of the fermentation process, but the additional hours that we add on, we get some very, very benign and sympathetic bacteria delivering additional flavors in the fermentation broth. The final plus is by the time we take the fermentation to the wash still, it's almost inert. In fact, it is inert. There is no life left. It's not bubbling. There's no activity. So the actual wash still process is a very, very easy and benign process. There's no activity from the wash as it's being delivered to the wash still. And that makes the process of distillation, there's no chance of boiling over or bubbling. There's very little chance of any solids in the wash burning onto the copper. So all of these things are a real benefit to when we finally go to the spirit still and deliver the kind of heart of the spirit that we're looking for to put into the cask.
You certainly are the scientist, Billy.
Yeah, right.
We got a couple of questions from some members out there. Chris Markle wants to know, if it's not giving away state secrets, could you tell us which Islay goes into the Limerick?
It's quite a meaty island that goes into that. Listen, I would be disclosing. I would be disclosing something that would be inappropriate, and but it's quite a ballsy Islay spirit.
Okay. So it is a state secret. All right. Would you tell us about your journey to Whiskey Magazine's Hall of Fame in 2020?
Yeah, well, look, I'm really lucky that I've been in this industry for almost 50 years, and I've been lucky to work with good companies and with good people, and people who were knowledgeable enough to point me in the right direction most of the time. But in truth, I started life as I'm a chemist by profession. I graduated from the University of Glasgow in '67. And I joined a pharmaceutical company called Organon, working on, in real terms, we were chasing the ultimate prize, which was a non-addictive painkiller. And I have to say, the 4 years that I worked in pharmaceutical research were unbelievably eye-opening and very, very, very enjoyable. But I came from the town of Dumbarton. I was born there, lived most of my life there, which was the home of Hiram Walker Ballantyne's. It was also the home of J&B, and indeed a number of other small distilleries. On the fringe, there was Little Mill, which unfortunately closed, and there was Loch Lomond, which was a few miles out in the town village of Ballach. So it was almost inevitable that I would end up working with Hiram Walker. And I have to say, my years there were both instructive, informative, and enjoyable. The blender there was one of the great blenders of the industry's ever produced, a guy called Jack Gowdy. And Jack was spectacularly good. He never sought popularity or indeed any kind of fame. He just got on with the job. And I have to say, in these days, Ballantyne's probably was the greatest blended whiskey on the market. Anyway, being foolish, I was tempted away. Instead of fermenting alcohol, I went off to ferment penicillin for 2 or 3 years. And I have to say, fermenting penicillin is a lot more difficult than fermenting alcohol, but also boring. And eventually, Inverhouse encouraged me to come along as their master blender. And I had a wonderful period with Inverhouse, who were at that time owned by Publica Industry, who were based in Philadelphia. And these guys were very, very creative. They absolutely thought out of the box. And they gave me incredible freedom and latitude to do all kinds of clever things with Inverhouse. We played MacArthur's, we had Glen Flagler, Glen Mavis, Mavis Heath. And it was a great time. And then I was encouraged to join a very, very small company called Burns Stewart, who virtually weren't on the radar, but they had some very interesting inventory and they were ambitious. And again, I spent almost 20 years there, actually. And during the process, we acquired Deanston Distillery, we acquired Tobermory Distillery. In both cases, and in the case of Deanston, I was given the opportunity to rehabilitate the distillery, get it working again, and give it a personality that in many ways the distillery had not been allowed to develop. Tobermory we acquired. It had in fact started working again, but at a very, very low level. Again, it was an interesting location, interesting spirit style, and yeah, that was a great opportunity as well. And during that period, we built the business. We not only built the business, we took the business public, which was not probably the cleverest thing to do, but we did it anyway. And but we delivered a lot of quite creative stuff during a period when single malt still had not really emerged as a growing or a heavyweight category. Anyway, the company was sold, and it was sold to Angostura. And it was a good time for me to make another decision. So I kind of moved on, and I had a couple of partners in South Africa who I have to say were wonderful, wonderful partners, who clever people. And we approached Chivas about buying BenRiach, and they again were very, very helpful. But it wasn't just BenRiach. At that time, in 2003, 2004, something like 20 single malt distilleries were closed or mothballed. And so we had a choice of one or two, maybe 3 or 4 distilleries. Anyway, we focused in BenRiach because classically the inventory availability was good. Again, it was a distillery that had virtually no reputation. So again, it was a blank sheet. And I think we did actually some quite clever things with BenRiach. Then the opportunity to buy GlenAllachie came up in 2008. And I mean, from my point of view, that was just an unbelievable opportunity. We'd also demonstrated to Chivas we were safe hands. And so after a number of discussions, we acquired GlenAllachie. And that was kind of bringing me back to my roots, because when I was at Hiram Walker, they had acquired teachers who had owned GlenAllachie. So I was familiar with both the history, personality, and certainly the historical DNA of the distillery. So again, it was a great opportunity to take this brand, deliver the kind of personality we wanted to give the opportunity. And you know, it worked really, really well. It was a terrific distillery. The spirit was great. But again, we wanted to recover the personality, the sherry style that it was noted for 30, 40 years ago. Then we bought GlenAllachie, which was interesting because it was a different style of spirit, a different kind that it was on the coast. It had, unquestionably, it had a maritime twist to the spirit. And that was intriguing. And I have to say that the sale of the business generally, the biggest disappointment for me was that we had done such amazing groundwork at GlenAllachie that we just didn't get the opportunity to see it through to getting some of the great releases onto the market. And so for whatever reason, I think it was probably my turn, somebody decided that I should be initiated or installed into the Whiskey Hall of Fame, and that's the story.
Okay, we got a couple of questions from our audience before I turn it back over to Chad. James DeGilio, I guess I pronounced that right, wants to know what years during your work do you think whiskey was at its best, or is it yet to come?
You know what, that's a really intriguing question, and I have given an answer to this in the last few weeks. I can tell you, in my opinion, the whiskey we are making today is light years better than we were making 40 or 50 years ago.
Okay. Next question is more of a comment from David Lancaster. He wants to thank you and Impex for joining Skurnik Wines and Spirits in New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut. He's so happy to represent your incredible whiskeys, and it's a pleasure showing his clients.
Okay.
So, Chad?
So, Billy, first off, I'd like to raise my glass to you and thank you for sharing this amazing history. So, we are very excited about a announcement that you have for WBSE and the Water of Life. That being said, would you please tell the audience about what we have coming out?
What is coming up, and I believe it's already on the high seas, is that you guys, we chose, given the kind of the kind of remit that we were provided with, we chose a beautiful cask. It's a GlenAllachie single cask 2009. It's cask number 5874. It's a PX puncheon. The AYS, or the maturation date, is the 1st of April 2009, and I hope that's not an April Fool. I'm only teasing. and the provenance is a PX puncheon. And the reason we chose this cask is one of the great pleasures and one of the demands of the remit that I have in the company is to follow the development of the various casks over the weeks and months. And the real trick is to capture a cask at what we believe to be the sweet spot before it moves to the next stage for maybe another 2, 3, 4, 5 years. And this cask excited us. I'm not, it's a shame I can't share it with you. As I said, I'm privileged enough or lucky enough to have a sample in front of me. I'm also lucky enough to have the bottle, which you can see has had a significant amount removed from it. But in terms of all of the important descriptors, colour is kind of quite rich mahogany. The characteristics that attracted us to this cask, in terms of the nose, there were waves of dark chocolate. I could pick up plantains, unsweet bananas, and figs, and then hints of nutmeg and ginger. I think this is interesting. This is a kind of this is standing out as this could be really, really interesting. On the nose, just lashings of treacle, dark chocolate mocha, heather honey, which is a characteristic throughout all of the GlenAllachie expressions. You'll pick up, if you have a sensitive enough palate, you'll pick up some pineapple, some grapefruit, and definitely on the finish, there'll be wonderful balanced notes, but wonderful notes of cinnamon. I can tell you, look forward to this. This is very, very interesting, and they will be queuing up for this one.
It sounds phenomenal. I can't wait to taste it.
I'm in line.
We all are. And hopefully you all are.
So Billy, we can't tell you how excited we are to have this opportunity to offer one of your personally selected expressions. We also want to thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to join us tonight. And we wish you continued success and joy with your excellent expressions. And now we raise a glass, and I got to grab one here in appreciation. And with this final thought, may you always paint with the color wood. Slancheva.
Slancheva, very kind, thank you.
Delicious.
Absolutely.
Thank you, gents. I'm happy to answer a few more questions. If not, I will say good night.
Well, I do have one more that just popped up here. How does a cask speak to you? You have a unique talent, and I'd like to learn more about how you judge a cask and how it impacts what's inside. That's from Mark Pruitt.
Mark, I think the journey starts when we make the choice of the cask. And David has alluded to one of the benefits we do have as a private company and privately owned company is we can make the choices that we want to make. And we spend a lot of money on wood, and that is not the restriction on any decision to buy the wood. But once we have bought the wood, in my mind, from my experience, I kind of know from what we've kind of driven into the wood, which would be what is the level of toasting, what is the level of charring. We kind of know when to expect to get the best return from that cask. But we will follow this. We will follow this religiously in some cases on a fortnightly basis, some cases on a monthly basis. But David and the sales, the warehouse team, which is wonderfully run by a guy called Lindsay Cormie, he is absolutely my right hand on the site in terms of cask management. We will look at 200, 300 samples a week, and we are constantly looking to determine how these casks are traveling. Is it delivering our expectation in terms of where the journey is going? And in most cases, our knowledge and the choice of cask works for us. In a very, very few number of cases, we get some disappointments. But by and large, We know what to buy. We think we know what to buy. We know what we're looking for from the cask. We think we know the time scale it will take, but we religiously follow it on a fortnightly or a monthly basis. I hope that answers the question, Mark. If not,
That sounds like a terrible job, Billy. I can't imagine having to do that on a daily basis.
listen, there are one or two challenges, one of which is having to leave the central belt of Scotland at 4 o'clock in the morning to get to the Sorry for.
Yeah, I can imagine.
But, you know, hey, that's life.
So another question from Chris Ellis. What are the biggest differences between working on blending versus working on single malt expressions?
It's a different challenge altogether. With a single malt expression, you're working with one base spirit with a singular, complicated, complex, but a singular personality. In terms of blending whiskey, it really is about developing a knowledge of the characteristics of the various components that will go into the blend, and that's built up from experience. Which one do I prefer? Actually, they're both very interesting. And raising that question, you know, when we acquired GlenAllachie, we insisted that we would also get ownership of the White Heather brand, which had 30 years ago been a singularly important brand in the Pernod range. And we wanted to rehabilitate this brand, recover its personality, and give it a presence again in the market, but not in the middle ground. We wanted to deliver this at the uber top end of the marketplace. So we launched a 21-year-old, and that was terrifically exciting. You know, we were playing around with some very old grain, which can be really interesting. But grain whiskey has the challenge that a 21, 25-year-old, it can, if the casks are too rich, it can get too woody. So that's the challenge for the blender, and it's also the fun. And if you can, in fact, get the cask right in a blended whiskey, the satisfaction ratings for a blender are sky high.
Okay, thank you. And I have a comment here from Sam, which I'm going to let Sam make this comment on his own instead of me reading it, since he's right here with us. Sam?
You got to unmute yourself, Sam.
You're muted.
He's shy. He's shy.
Sorry about that. I wanted to thank David and the whole team of Skurnik, who is one of our finest distributors in a very important market, New York, New Jersey, Connecticut. And that's the music to my ears that you're so enthused and so in love with this brand. And I'm pretty sure that transfers into your successful sales. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Sam.
Okay, I think that's all the questions we have for now. Chad?
Jarrett, Imepx Beverages is going to give us information on how to obtain the bottle of GlenAllachie 12-year-old 114 proof. Can you give us the information, please? And you're muted.
Billy, you can knock off now if you want.
Okay, look, if you don't mind, you know, guys, I am the when it comes to IT or anything to do, I am the ultimate Luddite. So my colleague, Mr. John Watt, was kind enough to come and provide support for me in the event that everything would collapse. So I now have to undertake to make sure John gets back to his house, which is about 20 miles away. So if you don't mind, gentlemen, it was great to join you. It's wonderful talking about whiskey generally, even better talking about this journey we're on with GlenAllachie. I wish you all great success, and I say good night. Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you very much,
Billy,
sir.
great job.
Good night.
Good night. Okay, Jared, you're up.
All right. So this could not have come at a worse time, because any second now there's going to be two 13-year-olds coming to take all this hockey equipment out of the back of this car.
We won't fault you for that.
Live action.
Yep. So I have not yet decided if I want to share this cask with you or just buy it all for myself. And it is a really amazing cask. And you guys are very lucky to be getting your hands on it. We don't do very many private casks of GlenAllachie for clubs or liquor stores or bars or whatever. So this is really special. For those of you that do have your sample kits, we're going to be running it all through Frank's Wine, Wilmington, Delaware. No sales tax, which is why I love Frank. It saves everybody 8 to 12%, depending on what state you live in. The bottle will be available for $160. However, we will be giving WBSE a 10% discount on any bottles ordered, as well as including a ticket for the Water of Life film in with your bottle. So for those of you that have not seen the film yet and would like to see it, if you can wait a short amount of time, we will definitely have a ticket in there. When you get your bottle, you can open it and enjoy drinking your bottle as you're watching the movie. So if anybody has any further questions, Bill, I know you know how to get a hold of me. It's very simple. No, this will not be available in the UK. It will be available in any of the lower 48 states. However, international shipping is not something that we can do at the moment. So for those of you that want it, it is a great opportunity to get a fantastic bottle of whiskey. And we really hope you guys take advantage. And if you don't, it's just going to be more bottles that are with me for myself to enjoy. So I also wanted to throw in really quickly, I was going to do this as we get to our tasting coming up here. Go ahead, you get your stuff. As I told you, here they come. As I was going to wait to do this to get into the tasting. Also, for those of you that ordered, we've created, WBSE has created a kind of cheat sheet for you guys to order from. It's not the easiest website to navigate. Bill and the team has put together something that makes it very easy to sign on, pre-order your bottle. And also Frank, being the great guy that he is, any of the whiskeys that we taste tonight or anything from GlenAllachie that you're interested in that he is able to get for you, he is also going to give a 10% discount. So once we get into the tasting later, I will give everybody prices of what we're tasting, and we have it readily available for anybody who would like to have a whole bunch of GlenAllachie at their house.
Okay.
I'll drink with that.
We are going to be posting that link up in WBSE and our barrel pick group. It will also go up in the GlenAllachie Appreciation Society, and at some point in the monthly sharing thread on Scotch Addict. So give everybody a chance to get in on this. It's going to be shared on all the Water of Life pages and social media outlets that they have as well. And Jared, correct me if I'm wrong, they're all ordering through the same outlet, so the 10% discount applies through the Water of Life as well as WBSE.
Absolutely.
Okay.
When the order's made, any order that comes in for GlenAllachie will receive 10% off, whether it's a standard bottling or the single cask. The Water of Life ticket to view the film will only be available for the single cask bottling though.
Okay, great.
So
all right,
these
Mindy?
bottles are definitely going to go quickly. Mindy?
Yeah. Now we would like to introduce the GlenAllachie International Sales and Marketing Director, David Keir. David will lead us through our virtual tasting tonight. David's career in the drinks industry began over 25 years ago with specialty retailers, the Whiskey Shop Group. During the following 2 decades, he has worked in a variety of roles with a number of branded drink companies ranging from Scotch and Newcastle and Diageo to privately owned distilleries such as Bruichladdich and Benriach. His current role is Sales and Marketing Director for the GlenAllachie Distillers Company Limited. Everyone, please raise your glass and welcome David.
Cheers, Dave.
Cheers, David.
Cheers, David.
Mindy, thank you. Thank you very much for that introduction. Sometimes I forget just how many years I've had the pleasure of working with whiskey. How do I follow on from Billy Walker? How do you follow that?
Offer whiskey.
It's hard. But so, David, you are going to lead us through sampling of the GlenAllachie expression as we continue on our journey with the water of life. So let's drink some booze.
Let's drink some booze. And you know, there's no better way to follow Billy than trying some of the products, some of the great whiskies that he's created. So we'll start with the GlenAllachie 12-year-old, which is the heart, the core of our range. Like everything, like all the GlenAllachie range, 46% unchill filtered, natural colour. Jared, you've got a raised hand. Anything you want to jump in there?
Yeah, I just wanted to tell you you're welcome, because the only way to follow Billy is not let people drink while he's talking. So we made sure we saved that for you.
Good, I'm very, very, very glad. Otherwise, I would have nothing to say. So what we've got here, 12-year-old GlenAllachie spirit, but since the day that we have taken on the distillery, or since Billy bought the distillery, every cask has been getting evaluated, getting re-racked if required, moved around. There's a huge amount of cask maturation, a huge amount of work going on at GlenAllachie. And you're going to see this in the whiskies we're going to try tonight. So the 12-year-old heart, the core of the range, look at the colour on that. Combination of different casks. Okay, now I've got the little information sheet in front of me here because I forget. But you know what? I'm not even going to look at it because I know the cask makeups for the batches, Billy, will vary slightly from time to time. But what I will say, big sherry influence in this one. Okay, so you've got a little bit of first fill ex-bourbon, a little bit, or should I say quite a lot of PX, sherry, hogsheads, and butts influence in there. But you know what? Why don't we try it, guys? Have a look at the colour. Have a quick nose. And for me, you're getting, Billy mentioned classic GlenAllachie DNA of butter, heather honey, butterscotch, etc. For me, you're absolutely going to get that on the 12. On the nose, getting that sweetness coming through. And on the palate, I put a little bit of water in my one. On the palate, it's a little bit subtle, but you're coming through. You're getting that waves of heather honey, butterscotch, toffee, wedding cake coming through. And Billy likes to talk about sometimes in GlenAllachie, if you've got a developed palate coming through, about picking up like pineapple, grapefruit, etc. Sometimes what I get in GlenAllachie, just a little bit of mint coming through on the finish. And that's something, I don't always get it, but sometimes just coming through after all that waves of chocolate and sweetness, there's just something else comes through. And as Billy alludes to it, sometimes it's pineapple, grapefruit, whatever. For me, it's just a little bit of minty note coming through on the back. The 12-year-old is what I've been sipping all through Billy's chat and conversation. So guys, what are you thinking on the 12-year-old? One point I should make as well. We bought the distillery in 2017. We launched in 2018. You're going to continue to see the evolution or the slight subtle changes in GlenAllachie as time goes by and we get more and more control over the inventory. Billy gets his mark on every cask and gets it exactly the way he wants. So you're going to see a bit of a sherry evolution. And depending on the bottlings you have of GlenAllachie, from some of the earlier ones through to the more recent ones, you will see that journey coming through, that sherry evolution coming through. I see someone popping up that they're getting a eucalyptus. Absolutely, Jared. That is exactly what I would say. Just that little kind of different note coming through.
That's exactly what I was trying to figure out. And it just, as soon as it was said, without a doubt, this is a very subtle pour. Very approachable if you're a bourbon drinker.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
This is a very transitional whiskey to go into Scotch. You do get that bourbon influence from this second fill bourbon cask, and all the little subtle like honey notes and butter. It's very, very balanced whiskey.
Oh, good. Yeah, that would be my take on it. Very well rounded, lovely, rich mouthfeel. And you're right, those with a more developed palate than I have, they can pick up the little subtle nuances. And you're talking in there about bourbon. Billy might drop a little bit of virgin oak cask in some of the vatting. He might put a little bit of Rioja red wine cask in the vatting. He might even pick a specific kind of virgin oak. You heard him talking there about all the different oak species. When you have his experience and his palate and his knowledge of what to put in casks and what way to take the whiskey journey, when he's doing the pilot battings and putting them together, he will tweak and amend it slightly to take it to wherever he's thinking. So, and I don't think he's telling a trade secret. When Billy's doing his samples, he alluded there to the 300 a week or whatever. When he's putting a bottling together, he has his core recipe, but he'll tweak and do little variations, just a few bits, a few different percentage points of different things, different cask types. And it's knowing which way to take it just to get that perfect subtlety, that perfect balance. Oh, alrighty. Well, good guys.
One of the things I wanted to comment on, David, is that this struck me when Sam had sent me multiple expressions from GlenAllachie. This is going back a while, but one of the things that stood out for me in almost every expression was butterscotch. It's amazing how he can get that butterscotch in almost every expression, but it's delicious. And it's the raisins and everything is there that anybody that drinks bourbon would like, as Chad mentioned. I do get the little hint of mint on the end, and Jared posted a comment in here that I'd like to add as well. He says it's eucalyptus is the sort of mintiness that he gets.
Yeah,
definitely. I think that butterscotch and mint is almost a GlenAllachie DNA, and then the Cask Evolution, which Billy's working on. I remember when we bought the distillery from Pernod Ricard, from Chivas, we got something like just under 40,000 casks. We now have something like 50,000 casks of GlenAllachie single malt at the distillery. So Billy has a lot of room to work and to play. But I think absolutely that classic Bill, that classic GlenAllachie DNA, honey, butterscotch, toffee, a little bit of mint. It just, for me, it kind of runs across them all. And I don't have the most refined palate. I know what I like. I know what I don't like. I can tell you after all my years of working in whiskey, I like GlenAllachie a lot. I think Billy's when Billy showed the bottle he had of you guys, the special single cask, the fact it was almost empty says it all. I've still got mine here and I haven't opened it, but I shouldn't be boasting because I know that all the stock is on the water. Shipping at the moment is an absolute nightmare globally, trying to get anything moving. So it's unfortunate that it didn't get with you guys in time. But that is life for everything at the moment, not just whiskey.
Right, exactly.
So, guys, why don't we move on to the 15-year-old? Okay. So we launched the 12-year-old in June 2018, and here's testament to Billy's dedication to quality. There's two things I say there. First of all, we were meant to launch earlier in 2018, and Billy said, no, I'm still working on the whiskey, so let's push the launch back. Now, we did that. For a small company just starting out, that was a big decision. But I think it's testament to Billy's philosophy that nothing will get bottled if it's not ready. So on that note, the 15-year-old, we didn't do our first bottling until I think it was August 2019, so it was a year after that we launched the core range, because Billy was still working on the 15-year-old. So again, like a 12-year-old, 46% unchill filtered, natural colour, similar cask makeup, a little bit different, slightly tweaked to this one, sherry all the way. Okay, so you've got sherry that's been re-racked, sherry that is 100% maturation. You've got sherry, which Billy will move it from sherry cask to get different flavors and different nuances. And you'll get that coming through on the nose. It is just an awful lot richer, deeper. But again, still that kind of sweetness, but it's just got far more depth to it.
And I can even smell the butterscotch on the nose on this. It's amazing. But isn't this a combination of Oloroso and Punch On? PX Punch On casks?
So what you've got there, he's got PX and Oloroso, two different sherry styles. PX is a little bit sweeter, Oloroso a little bit more drier. And I'm just getting a little bit of the Oloroso on the palate. And then he's used hogsheads, so you're a smaller cask, so you're getting a greater wood to liquid ratio contact. And then puncheons and butts, bigger casks. So a little bit more of a slower evolution with those guys. So all these little nuances and differences and flavour points, each cask is bringing to it, and the sherry type, Billy has married them together. And I haven't put water in this one. You've always got to be careful with a sherry mature whiskey. Sometimes if you put water in it, it can get, you can almost make it go flat, for want of a better expression. But I'm going to put just a little wee bit of water in this one, just being careful. You can always add more water in, but you can't necessarily take it back out. The only way you can get it back in ratio is to add more whiskey. So let's see how it tastes now with a little bit of water added in. Yeah, it's just coming a bit more alive.
So I just added 3 drops of water. And
absolutely.
Wow. It brings out a little bit more of the spicy note, which I really dig. This is, once again, this is a really easy drink crossover for a bourbon drinker. I'm primarily a bourbon guy.
We won't hold that against.
Hey, please don't.
We're converting you, though.
I will say.
Yeah, I will say. As
we are changing that.
I've learned a lot over this last 6 months and opened my eyes immensely. This 15-year-old is superb. You get the dark notes, like plum raisin maybe, and then you get this little spice of cinnamon with the water added, which is a beautiful touch. You definitely get the woody taste, and then of course the sherries. It's nothing that's overpowering, nothing's bland. It's just a lot.
It's all in balance. You've got Glenalke with a big spirit. You know, remember Glenalke was designed and built from day one to be used in blended Scotch whiskies. So it was designed and built for a little to go a long way. You know, you think of a chef in the kitchen working as a master blender, and when he reaches for the Glenalke, a little to go a long way. So you've got a big spirit, and it's standing up to big wood there, sherry, PX and Oloroso, but it holds its own, and the two are in perfect balance. So that's the talent of someone like Billy with 50 years of experience. It's just getting that nuance and getting the sweet spot. Jared, let me bring you in.
Yeah, so as we're on this 15-year-old, I just wanted to bring this up. Let me put my hand down while I'm talking. So for those of you that are new to GlenAllachie here, this is hands down the #1 selling whiskey and most enjoyed whiskey in my part of the country. GlenAllachie 15 is hands down the most sought after of the regular lineup. And I find it amazing. I didn't know till you just told us that Billy actually held up releasing it for almost a year because it wasn't where he wanted to be. So with that being said, and with all the casks that you guys inherited and are now filling, I have a question that it's a little bit nerdy, but I'm just kind of curious because you guys are so known for your sherry cask aging. I know you're still filling a fair amount of ex-bourbon casks. Do you fill those with the intention of finishing them or doing experiments, or are you doing them to do something else? Like, it is when spirit goes into an ex-bourbon cask, is it because there's a reason for it, or is it because we're going to try something crazy? Let's start it off in an ex-bourbon cask.
Well, first and foremost, I always know I'm going to get, and it's an Imepx session, nerdy questions. You guys are whiskey people through and through, so there's no need to apologise. I expect it and I anticipate it. We're filling into ex-bourbon is Scotch industry standard. The reason we still do it, although we've got more and more direction heading in the sherry direction, is for balance. Okay, we've cut back production substantially. We are filling more and more sherry, Jared, but we do a little bit of ex-bourbon, just so that Billy has got the flavours to work with. I'm going to use that chef analogy again, okay? That he's got that other flavour profile to work with. And that's what working with a lot of different virgin oaks is about as well, and all the wine casks and so on. It's to give him options further down the line. And we're having to look, because GlenAllachie is gone like that, we keep having to redo the operating plan of what we think we're going to need. And the numbers are getting, what we're filling is changing pretty much month by month. But that's the main reason, just to give Billy flavour options further down the line.
Okay, thank you for answering that. I was just curious.
One thing I wanted to point out is this is, correct me if I'm wrong, 46 ABV.
Yes.
46% ABV. This does not drink like a 46%. It drinks a little hotter than that. And for you barrel proof drinkers, that might be important to you.
It's a magic number.
Right.
Yes,
That's
it
why
is.
Pat liked it.
Absolutely. I've always shied from scotches because typically they are very low proof, and I used to think they're very one-dimensional. Over this last 6 months working with the Water of Life crew, really opened my eyes up to a lot of scotches. And I know Bill, after Sam Filmus sent them those samples, he's trying all these different ones. He's super sold on this GlenAllachie, as I am. This 15-year-old is, you could really fool somebody on the proof with this one. That spice really just, especially with the water, just makes it pop. That's a sexy ass whiskey right there.
Mark wants to propose to it.
I'm gonna go have a moment.
Well, speaking of which, Mark Pruitt says, David, would you put your blessing on me asking for the GlenAllachie 15's hand in marriage?
Get in line, Mark. Get in line.
But you know what? And I think there's something's coming through here, and we've picked up on that before, and I think it's testament to the quality of the whiskey Billy's putting forward. Is GlenAllachie seems to be, everybody seems to like it. There's if you're ex-bourbon or strong bourbon aficionado, you can take to GlenAllachie. But also, in picking my words careful, because we're always about responsible drinking and so forth, once the bottle's open, once it's popped, once that cork is popped, it's great whiskey to drink. It's not for pouring a little measure and getting geeky and analysing and whatever to the nth degree. It's about, enjoying the whiskey, and it drinks very, very well. Sam, I see you've popped your hand up there. Can we bring you in?
Sure, a few comments. Thanks, Dave. Number one, Mark Pugh, thank you very much for being so loyal GlenAllachie supporter. You've been, amazing. As to, I agree with Bill's concept of affiliating GlenAllachie with a Christmas cake and butterscotch. That's really on the point there. Chad, I'm in agreement with you. When you add a few drops of water to this 15, it would just knock on the door for sherry butts. Come on in, because that's where spicy components come through very, very clearly, and that's great. I also want to thank Greg Schwartz for connecting me with Billy and bugging me like, you got to send this guy GlenAllachie samples. You got to do it. You got to do it. And I finally did, and I appreciate you both being so enthused about that.
Thank you.
Well, I appreciate you calling me Billy and referring to me at the same name as Billy Walker. But that was when I was a kid, I was known as Billy, but now I'm Bill, but I appreciate that. Thank
Well,
you.
Bill, you owe me $100 for calling you Billy, so I accept checks and cash.
Checks in the mail.
Yeah, the check's in the mail.
Should
Thank
be
you,
there the
Sam.
second Tuesday of next week.
I really appreciate that, Sam. It was my pleasure. And, you know, if I could say something quickly, I honestly think that the 15-year-old GlenAllachie is like one of the most, if you created a triangle for the age, the drinkability, and the cost of a whiskey, I can't think of a whiskey that's better. You know, it's an affordable whiskey that's an older age statement, but it's just absolutely, it's amazing. And it's one of my all-time favorite whiskeys.
It's got great depth for that price as well. Yeah, go on. Yeah.
I'm not getting paid to say that.
Hey, Greg, let's hope the 12-year-old that we've got coming is going to change your mind on that.
Oh, yeah, but the 15 I can get again and again. The beauty of the 12-year-old is its rarity, you know, and I've never had a GlenAllachie that wasn't amazing. And it's like you know, I've always thought that watching Billy work, which I was lucky enough to do firsthand, but then to taste the product is like watching a composer. Or I'm sorry, watching a conductor work an orchestra. There's so many different things going on. It's not, you know, there's some great whiskeys that are big, bold, one-note whiskeys, you know, but this is like just, you know, mind-blowing.
I just can't get over the low proof and how it drinks so nice. As I forget who said it, but it drinks more like a barrel proofer. This is,
yeah, I said that.
This is mind-blowing. So, Bill, I'm going to be coming over to your house after this, and we're going to kill that bottle of yours.
We can do it. There's not that much.
It'll be done by the time you get there.
So, David, I think we're moving on to the Grotamaco next.
Right, yeah. So we're going to take a little bit of a change of direction here. So we've been talking sherry. What we're going to do here is...
That's interesting.
So, yeah, look at the color on that. Hang on, it's a lovely kind of rose blush.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So what we've got here is we've got ex-bourbon moved across into Grotamaco, Super Tuscan red wine from Italy. And, you know, and Jared, this maybe answers a bit of your question as well. For moving, it gives you options to work with different flavours further down the line with re-racking, etc. This is organic from Cullo Massari, Grotamaco Winery. Scores very, very, very highly. Different beast altogether. 48% alcohol. Okay, so we're kicking the ABV up a couple of points, the proof up a little bit. Ex-bourbon into Grotamaco barrique. So smaller cask against the sherry butts, etc.
That Grotamaco, is that a sweet, like dessert wine?
It's more. It's actually quite a big red. It's a big, full-bodied wine.
Okay, I'm not familiar with it. That's why I ask.
No. You know, you could be fooled by the color. Sam, can we bring you in?
Sam, you've got your hand up.
I think I just forgot to take it off. Sorry about that.
Okay.
So you guys know, while we're at a pass here, Super Tuscan wines are primarily Sangiovese with a little bit of Cabernet Sauvignon and a touch of Merlot.
This has a wild nose.
The nose reminds me of an Italian rosé I had when I was in
junior high.
Really wild.
In Italy. No, I was in Venice and I had an Italian rosé there, and it's just reminiscent of that.
You're absolutely. It's very light. It's very delicate. It's almost like a bit of stone fruit, something coming through in the finish.
Strawberries is what I get.
Yeah, wild strawberries.
Mm-hmm.
When the strawberries come up quite often. Let me see if Billy's got them down on his teeth.
Got a little peach on it. Peaches.
Mm-hmm.
This is one of the things when you work with wine casks that I've noticed. To me, I'm pretty basic with my tasting notes. I call it grapey. It's very, the wine cask definitely comes through. You can smell and you can taste the flavor of those grapes that were in that wine that was in this cask. before it got to GlenAllachie. It's something that to me is an amazing part of single malt, is to find whiskeys like this that have this juicy, grapey, winey quality to them, because you don't see it very often.
Oh man, that's delicious.
It's almost creamy on the palate.
Yeah,
It is.
You know, it just, there's so much going on. Now this is an 11-year-old, okay? So here's the 12-year-old we tried. We opened up the first with a sherry cask maturation, and here's the 11-year-old, which we just got in our glasses right now. So there's just that different direction, that different journey with working with the different woods. And Billy, you know, he decided to bottle these. All our wood finishes now, we bottle at 48% alcohol. He just feels that extra couple points just giving a bit more flavour, a bit more balance, and a bit more roundness, and just bring more to the party. Jared.
Yeah, so most of our people here joining us don't have the luxury of having a bottle handy, and I noticed this one. It's a 2-year finish in the Granamako cask. Are most of the finishes at GlenAllachie, are you shooting for 2 years? I know you take the whiskey when it's ready, but are you noticing that the whiskeys are finishing a little longer or a little shorter, or it's all over the board?
It's a great question. The simple answer will be when it's in balance of distillery character and wood. That is really I would say probably 18 months, 2 years is probably on the average where Billy seems to kind of think. But look, you know, it varies from, you know, is it a bigger cask? Is it a smaller, these are smaller barriques, for example. So it does vary, but 18 months to 2 years. But it's, you know, this came out as a set. There was a Rioja as well, went out to the US. We did an online tasting with Billy, and it was interesting. I think some people find the Granamako almost a little bit of a love it or hate it, and initially, and then when they revisit it as it opens up, they come back to it and they think, yeah, they get the nuances and they get the flavour. I'm going to put just a tiny little bit of water into this just to let it come. See what that does to it.
While you're doing that, David, let me give you a couple of comments from our audience, and I'm going to do the same thing while you're doing that. Joe Galano said that he got a little bit of cantaloupe on the nose, which when I went back and nosed it again, I could see where he found that, but very faint.
very, very faint.
Now he's saying he's getting grapefruit. So this thing is just morphing from one thing to another. Very interesting. I could sit back with a cigar and a glass of this and just enjoy myself.
So to me, I'm having a hard time. Not a hard time, but it's like there's something like real earthy on the nose, and then I get that in the palate on the finish end.
Sort of leathery.
Kind of leathery almost. This is one that I would really need like a little bit more time to dissect it. Drink's so light and easy for, what was it, 92 proof?
96.
96? Okay.
96, yeah.
Okay. It drinks very light and has all these little delicate taste to it. And it's really complex to me because I'm like trying to pull all these little things together, and it's like I'm not really able to articulate what I want to talk about. It's confusing. I love a whiskey that confuses the crap out of me.
You've absolutely nailed it. You know, first and foremost, whiskey is about individuality and what you get and the flavors, and that's the fact it's taking you on a journey. Is for us, that's what it's all about. And all the different notes that's coming out there, people getting grapefruit and whatever else coming through. That's fantastic. I think this one drinks a little bit deceptively. You look at the colour, you see that little light pink, delicate pink blush. You kind of, you know, that saying people drink with their eyes. And then you get this pretty full-bodied whiskey coming in, and it's full body, but it's got a lot of subtleties and delicacies too. So
it truly does.
So David, was this a first fill Grottomaco cask?
Yes, this will be first fill. We've used it, and well, I'm saying first fill. You know, there might be a little bit of he might have popped a couple of second fills that he's used as well, but the majority of it would have been first fill. So yeah, and it's great wine, and it's interesting. One thing, just to give you a little bit more insight into the relationships between the whiskey companies and wineries. The guys at Grottomaco, Colin Massari, the winemaker Luca, in particular, really easy to deal with, and said, we have no issue with you using our name, because a lot of companies you cannot use their name. They just you get tied in knots. But even with these guys, they asked, not Luca, but his colleagues, when they realized that we were cooperating, said, can we see copy of your of the text of what you're going to do and of your packaging and everything? So it gets to be a little bit complicated. Well, we're delighted and proud to say that we're using Grottomaco from Tuscany. It gets complicated to use a winery's names, and you'll see that happening more and more often, I think, with companies. You know, our Rioja cask, we can't say. Someone asked Billy about the Isla that we use, which is from near the beginning of the alphabet. Much as we like to give as much disclosure and information as we can, it can become challenging and difficult to do so. Greg?
I was just going to say, David, that there's a couple of distilleries, GlenAllachie and Bruichladdich, chief among them for me, that do take wine casks so seriously that it forces me and probably other people to become more educated about wine. You know, and I love that they do that. That they, you know, they're like, oh, I've never heard of this wine. So then you have to kind of go back and look into what is this? Because it'd be easy just to say wine cask, but that's kind of half measures, you know. And I've always kind of liked that about that, because I'll admit I did not know what this wine was beforehand.
So I have to agree with what Greg just said. I'm going to order a bottle of this wine. Joe Giuliano in the comments, he goes, there's a bit of mustiness, and not in a bad off-putting way. And I'm getting that. And I'm wondering if it's the wine finish, because it's GlenAllachie has a very standard way of doing their whiskey, their spirit. And this has this kind of funky mustiness to it, earthiness to it. That's really, it's so intriguing. So look, as Greg was saying about the wine, I want to go try a bottle of this wine, because I'm not a wine guy. I don't know wine. That's a whole nother door I don't even want to open. But now I'm really curious to get in a bottle of this Italian wine, Tuscany wine, and just trying to figure this out.
You won't be disappointed. You won't be disappointed.
Awesome.
We, as part of our cooperation with Colin Massari, they sent over a couple of cases of this. We sent over some of our whiskey, or they sent over couple of cases of the wine. We sent over a couple of cases of whiskey. Neither party was disappointed. In fact, Luca and his team toasted this year's wine harvest with some cask samples of our ongoing cooperation. So it's great when we can get that relationship. But I will say, by the way, you will not be disappointed. It is a fantastic wine. Sam, anything you'd like to add in on that?
Sure, David. Thank you. I agree with you guys. It's a great wine, and it's a kind of discovery for me, for myself. But David at some point shared the chart of ratings that this Grottomaco wine was getting throughout the years. Everything is 90 and up, 90, 95, 96 points. So that's, we're talking about quality. And you know, another comment I want to say, 48% ABV. This expression handles it very, very well. Like, the balance is there. We still see this GlenAllachie DNA through the tasting, but it's a great dimension, very rare, and great combination. So thank you, Billy Walker. Thank you, everyone at GlenAllachie who came up with this kind of great expression.
You're here.
Yeah. Jared, you have a question?
Yeah, so for those of you that aren't into wine, Chad, yourself included, apparently, when you get into the super Tuscan wines, they're earthy, they're dirty, they're leathery, they're tannic, they're very big and bold and intense types of wine. I started my journey selling wine, and your super Tuscan Italians are some of those wines where you need to put them in your cellar for 20 years before they're ready to drink, because they are that big and that dynamic.
Okay,
And,
so that's where I'm getting these flavors
you're
from.
that earthy and dirty and musky milk. That's 100% the wine coming through. Absolutely.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Like I say, not being a wine guy, that was really confusing to me, because it's like I'm trying to connect the dots, and it was like the dots were just all over the place.
That's what makes whiskey fun, is watching.
Oh man, I love. That's one of my favorite things.
Yeah,
absolutely. And having these conversations, you know, I'm still learning from Billy. Gosh, I've still got so much to learn. Every time Billy chats, or I wander around the distillery with him, or we have the pleasure of doing something like this, I learn something. You know, something sticks in my mind, and I thought I must remember that. So, well, we've got one more whiskey.
Before we go into that one, I have one more question from the group. Sure. What was the age of the Scotch before it went into the Grottomaco cask?
So we bottled it at 11 years. So it would have been around 9 years old, give or take. It might even have been 10-year-old, about 9 or 10-year-old, and then give or take 2 years in the Grottomaco barriques.
Okay, great. All right, well, let's get into the 10-year cask
strength, baby.
Okay. Now this is one. The cask strength is an interesting one, and I think when we launched, particularly in the very early days, the 10-year-old cask strength, people are like, "Wow, there's something special here. There's something happening," and that has continued to evolve until one of the batches landed the world's best single malt from Whiskey Magazine. And this is a blind tasting. Judges all around the world, up against whiskies of all ages, tasting single malt from all around the world. 10-year-old GlenAllachie cask strength was picked as the world's best single malt. So, classic GlenAllachie DNA again. Bit of sherry cask maturation, a little bit of virgin oak used in this one. You'll maybe get some of that coming through, and a little tweak from some of the earlier batches that Billy's used some red wine. Now it's 55%. I think this one is at 55 on the nose, 55.9% this one. So 112 proof, if I'm getting my
Brad.
So it's got a lot of kick, guys. I'm going to try it straight and have a nose, but it's high alcohol, so just careful.
That's 111.8 there, David.
Careful.
Cheers, Jared. And the Scottish arithmetic, I got to 112, but I appreciate it.
Wow, you know, spice.
And you know, if it hadn't, I'm getting. You wouldn't think it was 111.8.
Not at all. No way.
Taking that. Let me have a glass of water. Just cleanse the palate. And I'm going to leave it.
Chocolate and caramel.
Oh my God, this has a lot going on.
Mindy thinks it's minty.
There is minty.
Everyone was talking over each other, so I put it in the chat. But yes, it's very minty.
It is minty. It's got that classic GlenAllachie DNA, but there's more. There's something else going on in there.
There's a lot going on in this one, without a doubt. You do get that pineapple, that mint that Mindy was speaking of. Maybe eucalyptus again. You do get the wooden influence on there.
Absolutely.
The viscosity of this. I'm looking at it just clinging to the side of the glass and just slowly, I mean, seriously, like, I don't got all day to wait for these legs to drop. I mean, this is just a great mouthfeel. at almost 112 proof. It doesn't drink hot by any means.
It's fantastically balanced. Has anybody tried it yet with a little splash of water? I put a little bit of water.
I just added a little bit of water myself, and it brings out a little bit of that mint even more, that spicy mint.
Does anybody else get coffee?
I get a little coffee, I get cinnamon, some mocha.
Yep, there's all that going on in this one. I put a little bit of water in. I think I brought it down to maybe about 95.36 proof. I'll need to check that.
That's a lot of water.
I think for me,
you have your dropper. You're testing it.
That's quite a dropper you got there, Fonz.
I'll be running it Billy's alkalizer afterwards. But I think, and this is an interesting one, because the 10-year-old came into the range. We'd bought the distillery, or Billy had bought the distillery. We were doing an awful lot of cask sampling. And I always remember being in the warehouse with Billy, the Lindsay's Billy touched on earlier on, the warehouse manager. And we were trying younger GlenAllachie straight from the cask at a high ABV. Everyone was every sample was like, wow, wow, wow. And that was pretty much, a decision was made there and then. We should do a cask strength, and we should do it slightly younger to showcase the quality of GlenAllachie spirit at the younger age, at the higher ABV. And I think from the testament all around the world, it is working. I mean, simply put, we cannot bottle enough of this stuff. It goes like hotcakes.
I can see why.
Yeah, it is. Do you know, we've got a market in Asia that has asked for 5,000 cases. Can we get? And I'm like, no way we can get 5,000. We don't have enough to give you that. But that is one of the ways, and it's Korea. Korea is looking for 5,000 cases of 10-year-old cask strength of the next batch, because we just can't keep it. It just, there's a saying in Scotland, snow off a dike. It just disappears. It goes in stock and it disappears. Jared.
That's actually what I was going to say when I told everyone earlier, the 15-year-old is number one, hands down. This would be our number one selling whiskey, but there's just not enough of it to go around. The accounts that I go visit, when I let them taste it, oh, give me 3 cases, give me 5 cases. People can't get enough of this whiskey. And I would like to put in a request to make larger batches of this. So
hey, I'll settle for 1 case. That's fine.
I'll settle for a bottle.
We are just before I bring in Sam. We are going to make bigger batches. We're restricted by what Billy says is ready, but we're going to do bigger batches without compromising the quality in any way whatsoever. But we've kind of made, at the moment, we've made a rod for our own back because we can't satisfy demand. And, this is meant to be pretty much part of the core range. There's always a 10-year-old cask strength. Yeah, it'll run out. We're going to maybe do 2 batches a year. It'll run out at some point. But the way it is at the moment in the UK, for example, we bottle it and it becomes a frenzy of everybody trying to buy it. And GlenAllachie is not about that. We want to make whiskey for drinking. I always remember at GlenDronach, my previous company, when we do a single cask batch, for example, people from all around the world sitting up trying to buy a bottle in frustration. And we've always said the GlenAllachie mission has always been, we will not go down that route. We want to make whiskey for drinking. And we're kind of, because of the quality of what Billy's producing, we're falling into that. Right? And how do we get away from it? One of the things we'll do, we'll bottle slightly bigger cask batches, bearing in mind Billy's caveat that nothing gets bottled if it's not ready. Sam.
Thanks, Dave. We've done hundreds of tastings, whether it's in person or during the pandemic, virtual tastings. We start with 12, people like it a lot. Then we go to 12 to 15, people love it, absolutely love it. And you would think there's no any limit to it. You go with 10 and they wow it. It's like great evolution. And it is a great kind of problem to have because it does come in a limited quantities. Jared, for good news for you, we doubled our U.S. allocation from 500 cases to 1,000.
I'll take
So
the
hopefully,
I'll take the extra 500, Sam. Send them my way.
hey, they come to my warehouse first, as you know, Bill Burnell's cask. I'm gonna steal a bottle from my warehouse because I think
where's your warehouse at?
What's that address again?
It's undisclosed. It's undisclosed. It's a secret location.
You know,
I know where it
so being kind of a
Thanks,
Scotch
everyone. Good
dude,
night.
Hey,
being
Greg,
somewhat
remember
of
our undisclosure agreement, please. You know, hold your horse.
being somewhat of a Scotch noob, and you know, I mean, when it comes to bourbon, I could talk all day and really know a lot. With Scotches, some of my favorite whiskeys I've tried have been Scotches, and they've usually been pretty old Scotches, like 40-year-old, 32-year-old Scotch. This drinks so much older than a 10-year-old, and so I just had a pour of another Scotch over here that is supposedly 40-year-old Scotch in there. And it's so comparable in complexity and depth. And it blows my mind of being only 10 years old. And this is a superb, this is a freaking winner in my eyes. I mean, the 15-year-old was phenomenal. That Grotto one was interesting. This 10-year-old is just drop dead sexy, man. This is I could see why.
I appreciate it. I think what we're tasting here is the fruits of a master blender at the top of his game.
Yeah.
And there's no constraints. Billy was too modest to say when he was asked about is something differentiates us from other whiskey companies, whiskey producers.
Somebody just commented on the group feed that said this one could turn a cask strength bourbon drinker into a Scotch drinker.
Very easily.
I'll take that. I'll take that.
I mean, seriously, minus the Grotto, all three of these are so easy transitional pours for the bourbon drinker, without a doubt. I mean, I know where my allegiance lies. But these three, wow. I mean, seriously, like for a bourbon guy, these are great whiskeys. This one's not bad by no means. It just confused the shit out of me. So I don't have
That's the great thing about palates and different cask types and different whiskies and exploring all the genres. And do you know what? Look, I that has made my evening. That those comments. And then Billy, and I'll let Billy know as well. We make whiskey for drinking, and we are just at the beginning of our journey. We've got so much to do, and you know, if we're getting this reaction 4 years after we bought the distillery, what's it going to be like further down the line? Greg, I see you've raised your hand.
I wanted to share a quick comment and ask a quick question. One of the things, a couple months ago on the live broadcast I do every week, I had Juliet on, which for anyone who doesn't know, Juliet is David's colleague who is head of European sales. Is that right?
Absolutely, yes.
And she made a great comparison between this 10-year-old and the 28-year-old Glenalachie, which I just thought was brilliant. She said, the 10-year-old is like your teenager who is a bit of a wild child, but you respect them for that. And the 28-year-old is once they're old enough that you can sit down and have a conversation with them. And I loved those two kind of juxtapositions. But the other thing is, you know, this hasn't come up yet tonight, and I wanted to make sure I didn't miss out on it. But you know, you guys have yet to release a single whiskey that Billy distilled, right? I mean,
absolutely, yeah.
It's crazy to think about what's in store.
Yeah, we've got some. Again, picking my words carefully because marketing might be listening. We have something, on Billy's mantra, we'll bottle it when it's ready. We're getting near that stage. And I think maybe next year, 2022, 5 years after we bought the distillery, the whiskey might be 4 years, depending on when we distilled it. If it's ready, we'll bottle it, Greg. At the moment, it's looking all that. I mean, some of the stuff up there is absolutely incredible. If you've got care and attention with your spirit, you know, that big distillery running in Tickover, 106-hour fermentations, experiments, 500 hours, dedication to the casks, the quality of the casks, the master blender sitting on top of the casks, evaluating them every month, even every couple of weeks. We've got some great things coming out there. So, yeah, watch this space, Greg. And just while I've got you on here, I'm down in Northumberland just now, which has got a phenomenal stars down here. So every time I see the stars down here in Northumberland, I think of when you guys came to the distillery and filmed Water of Life, and that was great fun. I really enjoyed it. And Alfonso showed me a still or a slow motion of the stars above the church, and I think Alfonso might be able to tell me what it was. That always reminds me, Alfonso, when I come down here, whenever I see the stars down here, of your shot from the Water of Life film, which you showed me. So just popped into my head there, guys. So that was good.
Thank you. You know, can I want to, Billy made, and you by extension made me look like a genius when, you know, David, I'm going to share a quick anecdote. David came to LA 2 years ago. Was it, David, when you did the sales?
Back before the COVID thing, yeah.
Yeah. So we were still editing the movie. David came and visited us, and we showed him a couple clips and things. And then I told David, there's a liquor store. I'm not going to name them because I don't want to embarrass them. But there's a liquor store that has a great selection here, but kind of by accident. Like, I don't know that they know what they have. They have a huge selection just because they're a volume player, and they have a huge, huge collection of whiskey. And the head of the whiskey selection there, I told them, I said, this guy's going to come visit you. You should buy some GlenAllachie from him and start carrying it. And they said to me, they're like, I never even heard of that. And I said, just trust me. In 2 years, you're not going to be able to keep it on your shelf. And so you did, they did. And while we've been talking, I just went to their website. They have 9 GlenAllachies sold out. And, you know, it has been amazing to me for the last 2 years to see what, you know, what the Billy Walker touch has done to a brand that's been around for a long time, but just wasn't, you know, what it is now. And it's just astounding how fast and how prestigious it's grown.
When you're a small company, getting your message out there takes a little bit of time. Of course, at that point, we didn't work with Impex. You know, but I remember that I jumped in my Uber and I headed up to the hills, and I did my chat. So I'm delighted to hear that they've got 9 GlenAllachie. It's not so good that they're sold out, but this is a challenge we have. It's trying to keep product in stock, and particularly with the shipping situation globally as it is horrendous. So no, but that sums up where we've gone from. So me walking in 2 years ago, trying to explain GlenAllachie, and then 2 years later, 9 sold out. Guys, I'm conscious I'm talking on a lot. There's a couple of things I wanted to thank you. I wanted to say, I think you might have some questions, but I want to say thank you to WBSE for having myself and Billy on board. Impex for all the great work we do. Frank's Wines for all the support they've given the event tonight. I think that's fantastic. And of course, Water of Life Film for, you know, coming to GlenAllachie all those years ago when we were unheard of. So thank you all very much for that. And
we will thank you for them.
I'm here if anybody's got any other questions or anything they want to cover off.
We do have a few more questions. I did just want to make a comment now that everybody has sat here for a few minutes and not taken a dram, except for Greg, who just did. Does anybody notice Heath Bar on the finish in their mouth after sitting there for a little bit, like a chocolate covered toffee? Anybody else get that?
I got that on the 15-year-old.
I got that on the 15-year-old too. Yeah.
And sure, that's sort of that's your chocolate and butterscotch, right? You mix up. Yeah.
I'm still
a good whiskey when the finish keeps going.
It does. It's a very long finish. So, Greg, I believe you are up next with questions. We've got a couple more before we wrap things up.
Well, I mean, this is kind of carries on with what I was just saying to David. You know, I'm really curious about this sort of. I really think you just touched on it a lot, but about what goes on this is check me if I'm wrong here, David, 53-year-old whiskey, the distillery, 68, 1968. So old enough, but, only, you guys have, in the matter of, 4 years of ownership, but just really in the last 2 years have just kind of exploded onto the whiskey zeitgeist. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's been a real journey. I worked with Billy at Benriach and Glendronach, and when the company was sold on, kind of knew our journey we had more to do. And when Billy started talking about GlenAllachie, I've been in the whiskey industry for 20 odd years, and I had to think, GlenAllachie, where the hell is that? So it's been producing, pretty much non-stop all these years, but never been available, never had an identity of in its own right. It's been owned by various companies through the years, and latterly was in the great hands of Shivers Brothers. They're great whiskey makers, without a doubt. But they were using it in their blended Scotch whiskey portfolio, White Heather, McNair's as well, things like that. So to take this great whiskey from nobody's heard of, and it's a bit of a hard slog to start with. We did have the advantage of Billy's name, opened a few doors initially, but it's just been a great journey. And to see, and that story you told about the retailer, that just sums it up from going along. We started with 7 employees. There was 2 people in the sales team, myself and my colleague Ali. I did the UK, Asia, and the USA on my own. Okay, so that kind of tells you where we were. And it was walking around retailers and selling it in by hand. I remember going around Glasgow with samples, trying to get listings in the bars to take it to wholesalers. Now we've got wholesalers coming to us. So it's been great to see our baby grow like that. But it's also been great to bring almost this, without sounding a cliche, this hidden gem, and to bring that out to the market and share GlenAllachie. And the comments that you guys are making about that would convert a bourbon drinker. Well, that's, I'm just delighted to hear that. So it's onwards and upwards, but we've got so much to come out with. We've got our own distillate. We've got more finishes. We've got more Cask Evolution. There's just so much happening. Blends, rum, everything. Billy is as passionate and enthusiastic about spirits, whiskey, rum, etc., as he was all those years ago.
Right, Sam, can you pick up on the next question, number 3?
Sure. As David mentioned, GlenAllachie was not very well known because it was producing their single malts to blends, and maybe there was a couple of independent bottles that were able to get a hold of a cask or two. Like this one, I'm not sure if you see it. Is a single cask of GlenAllachie out of independent bottle that I brought in 2004 for one of the stores in San Francisco as exclusive cask.
And wine.
Yep, Jan Wines. And it's been, sometimes it takes the distilleries, ages, to kind of become famous. Billy, bought this distillery less than 4 years ago. With him taking this distillery over, becomes widely available and popular as a single malt. What did it take to make this happen?
Well, we needed, making great whiskey, patience, great whiskey, but good partners as well. Good partners. We took that story there, Greg and myself. I'm sales director and I'm having to go around retailers on my own, not knowing the area. A simple comment from a filmmaker in LA saying you need to go and visit this store. So I think partners, key partners in the market has been a crucial point for us as well. Once we got a certain critical mass, just talking about the USA, for example, where I think we've seen phenomenal growth. I think it's fair to say that the Imepx team are your whiskey people. You are first and foremost whiskey people, and you work with great distributors across the country, 48 states, I think Jared said. It's working with great people has been fantastic. See, when you work with guys that you can just say, look, you know what, this is what we've got, go run with it. I don't need to micromanage. It's been a pleasure working with Imepx in the USA, I must admit. And I think it's just been a great journey. I think we're taken aback by the growth. It's been a journey for us all. And we've had some ups and downs. This year in particular, it's been very, very challenging trying to get dry goods, trying to get shipping, trying to get everything. But no, it's been a great experience. It's been a great experience in working with great partners, whether it be Impex distributing and the state guys, Skilling Wines, etc., through to the Lucas at the Graffamaco casks, the Miguel's at the sherry casks. It's just been fantastic. It's been great fun, and I'm looking forward to many more years and the next steps.
Great, thank you, David.
It's a very steep hill, but you've been doing well. We applaud you.
Well, you know what? It really is a team effort. It's a team effort from everybody, from Billy setting the tone about we won't bottle till it's ready, right through to the warehouse guys, the bottling guys, the shipping team, and then through to our distributors. But most important, as well to the consumers. You know, people have taken to GlenAllachie. You know, they're like, there's something here. They like the story. We're 100% Scottish owned, managed. Billy's of an age that he could have retired and sailed off to the Caribbean. No, he's obsessed with whiskey making. People relate to that, and it's a pleasure and an honour to be part of a straightforward whiskey company. It makes it easy for me. It really does make it easy for me.
Yeah, I think Billy's having fun in his later years in life, as opposed to trying to build a distillery. He's having fun making the whiskeys that he's making and doing a wonderful job of it.
Absolutely. We don't answer to any shareholders or anything like that. The only plan we have is trying to make sure we get enough casks of a suitable quality. And that's pretty much the rest just falls into place from there.
All right, Greg, would you jump in here and tell our viewers about what inspired you to develop your film about the Scotch whiskey industry and why it's called The Water of Life?
Sure. My love of whiskey began in Scotland when I was an exchange student. So, it was already there. And then when I revisited in 2017, it kind of rekindled the idea. And I don't remember the moment we decided to call it The Water of Life, because it was pretty early on. It was, that's, in case anyone doesn't know, the word whiskey comes from Ushkabeha, which is Gaelic for the water of life. Aqua vitae is the Latin equivalent of it. And Ushka is eventually, I will let someone who can pronounce Gaelic words better than I can kind of break that down into its various iterations over the centuries, but it became whiskey. And, I wanted to tell the story about craftsmanship, and I wanted to tell the story about the tradition and the experimentation at the same time. When we were shooting the film, I believe we were about halfway through the shoot. I'm not exaggerating when I say this. When we were shooting the film, I didn't drive during the shoot. I can drive in the UK. I lived there for a while, but I just happened to not be on the rental of the van we were in. And Trevor was driving, and I got a message from David saying he'd heard about us shooting the movie and would we be interested in coming to GlenAllachie to shoot. And I'm not kidding when I say we all but did a Smokey and the Bandit screech to a halt 3-point turn, call our Leslie Ann, our producer in Scotland, and say, scrap tomorrow, we're doing this. Like we ripped up the floorboards to immediately, because the only reason we weren't doing that beforehand is because I knew Billy Walker from Glendronach and Benriach and Glenglassaugh. I didn't even know at this point that he had bought a new distillery and that he was doing this. And as soon as I found out, it just completely changed the entire tenor of what we were doing. And, Billy's the exact kind of person that I'm inspired by, because I think you can be inspired by someone like that, even if you don't like whiskey. It's just someone who loves what they do, just really, really loves what they do. And you can just sort of, follow on that. And that's kind of what our film is about. And I hope people who see it get that.
Okay. I was delighted you came up to the distillery. I was delighted you guys came along. I enjoyed seeing filming. Not only having you on site, but actually seeing from behind the camera as well. It was interesting. We enjoyed it. So thank you both, and thank you all for coming up.
One of my favorite still photos, David, from the shoot is you and me and a whole bunch of us tucked behind that wall of the warehouse. If you've seen the movie, there's a slow motion shot of 3 guys rolling casks outside of Glenalachie. And we were shooting that from the drone, and Alphonse, who's our drone pilot, turned the drone around and shot a photo of all of us sort of cowering behind the building.
Yeah, that was good fun. That was good fun. Thanks again for coming.
All right, Greg, you're up now with a second clip to talk about how your film is a celebration of whiskey. Maybe you have something in there from GlenAllachie. Maybe you have something queued up from something else. Go for it.
Maybe while we were doing this, while David was talking a few minutes ago, my computer crashed and I rebooted it without anyone knowing because I wasn't the one talking and I haven't reloaded it yet. So maybe you'll give me another moment to do that, but just give me 1 second. I'll just talk about other
Maybe
stuff.
you're gonna vamp, right?
Well,
Yeah,
while we
'cause,
take a moment, how about we just have a drink?
Yeah, that sounds good to me.
Hey, can I ask you a question while we're vamping? This is Grammatica. I mean, Sam, Jared, maybe you could tell us that that's available currently here now.
Yeah, Frank's got it for sale. That's the whole point. He was one of our supporting guys. It's for sale. This is probably a good point to tell you. The 12-year-old, $69.99. If you guys got your pens down. The 15-year-old, $109.99. The Grotamaco is also $109.99, and then the 10-year-old is $99.99.
Wow.
That's before the 10% discount with no sales tax. So anybody that's interested, feel free to hop on his site, send him an email, whatever you got to do. If there's any other questions, let me know.
Jared's phone's already blowing up.
It's blown up.
He started.
Well, let me add to this a little bit of a spice.
My wife asking if I'm going to watch the hockey game or not. So,
yeah.
Sam?
Oh, sorry.
So GlenAllachie Gracamata is totally sold out our warehouse, and the reason why Jared insisted of bringing it or making it available because he's got a few cases in his market, but it's sold out.
This is on auction on eBay. This is what we have left.
I'm ready now, Bill.
Okay, go for it, Greg.
Go for it.
All right, here we go. This is just a little sort of a celebratory moment. It's not specifically about GlenAllachie, but it's from the movie and it's about everything. You'll see.
You can celebrate with a whiskey. You can go to a funeral and then have a whiskey. You can have a birthday and have a whiskey. You can have a whiskey on a Tuesday. Whiskey's for any time, and it's not just for your dad.
This is uncorking entertainment. This is uncorking conviviality and fun and smiles and laughter, whatever you want to call it. I've never once met anyone who goes, I've neck a glass of whiskey or whatever, and they sit there and there's no emotion behind it. If you do that, God, go and drink vodka.
I love that line. Thanks for sharing that clip with us, Greg.
That's my favorite line in the movie. I'm not kidding.
Absolutely, it's there's a few lines from the movie that I try to use and live by, actually. So, David, do you see any trends in the spirits industry, even beyond Scotch whiskey, that we'll see over the next few years?
Oh gosh, a big question. I think maybe there's a little bit of a more, consumers are a little bit maybe more discerning about what they're drinking. And it's everything, what they're drinking, what they're eating. And I do think you're seeing that coming in to the spirits world. People, what are they drinking? Where does it come from? The provenance, the cask makeup, the ABV, everything. Consumers are very, very aware now of what's in their glass. And there's a lot of products out there, and it's quite right that they should be discerning about where they put their money. And I think what other trend? Tequila is big in the US. Is it going to cross over to Europe? Who knows? Rum been threatening to be the next big thing as long as I've been in this industry. I think maybe there is a little bit of a tailwind behind rum as well. And again, I think Billy touched on it too. The big brands have been out there for a long, long time doing their thing. I think you're now starting to see a bit like single malts maybe 20 years ago. Consumers now a little bit more interested in rums away from the bigger thing. Single cask rums, small batch bottlings, higher proof, etc. So yeah, I think, but that just a general greater awareness from consumers in general about what they're drinking and what's in their glass.
Nice.
Okay.
I agree on the rum thing, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So this question is for both Sam and Jared and David. Do you see the number of single casks available to select retailers and whiskey groups changing over the next year or two?
Well, I'll answer that twofold. I'm going to say one, industry-wide, I think probably, yeah. The demand for single malt Scotch whisky globally is so high that it's harder and harder. There's just not enough stock to go around. So I think more and more stock is getting held for proprietary company bottlings. For us at GlenAllachie, yes, I think it will as well. We probably, I'll be quite honest, probably went too far one way, that we were so flattered that people were interested in having a single cask of GlenAllachie. Absolutely delighted that we managed to borrow one for you chaps. We were flattered, and if someone asked, can we get a single cask of GlenAllachie, we would try our best to make that happen. You know, Billy would pull casks with samples, would evaluate, etc. But we've almost got in a position that as a company we can't quite cope, we can't quite manage to keep doing that. Again, you know, I'll give you an example. We've got markets around the world saying, can we get 25 single casks? It's trying to meet demand. And we're trying to make it that people can drink GlenAllachie and get it and enjoy it. But actually, what can we as a company and our infrastructure cope with? You know, we have a small team. All our casks are at the distillery. So when we start to pull samples and reserve stock for single cask bottlings, it ties up a lot of stock. It's a lot of work for the warehouse team. So we need to try and get a little bit more structure, a little bit more balance into that. So I think to answer the question, and it's probably not good news, globally, and speaking on behalf of other competitors, single casks are going to be harder and harder to get, I think. And GlenAllachie, we will have to just be a little bit, we have to try and manage demand, and it's difficult for us. We want people to drink GlenAllachie, but we need to be careful we don't make promises that we can't fulfill.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think we'll need to tighten it a little bit. So you guys got in just in time. So we'll always make exceptions, you know, we'll always make exceptions. And once this one works through, come and speak to me. I'm going to speak to Sam. We'll see if we can do a follow-up. But let's get this one going first.
So essentially what you're saying is we have a diamond here.
You have a diamond. And I'll tell you something else, actually. This one's picked by Billy Walker. This one's picked by Billy Walker. I don't think off the top of my head any others have been picked by Billy Walker for a group. So when the opportunity came up to partner with Water of Life and WBSE, I think it was like, okay, Billy, go for it. So you have a diamond, you have a polished diamond. It's not a diamond in the rough, you have something exceptional there.
They call it.
And I have, this creates an issue for me because I have a bottle here. So do I open this and drink it, or do I keep it?
Drink it with good
drink
company.
it, absolutely.
And this is where I would say, chug that shit.
I will get you another bottle if you need it. That's fine. Fine.
So, that's it open, guys. So I will be joined. I will have, after I walk the dog tonight, I'll come back and I'll have a little bit of that one finished tonight.
This bottle's a bit of a collector's item then.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There's going to be few available. Okay. Very good.
Jared, I'm sorry. David, if you wait a second, maybe we'll do a little group tasting. We have bottles.
Do Alphonse. Defons has a bottle already too?
No, we don't. But when we get it,
yeah.
Maybe we can do a group tasting.
If
That
it
would
works for
be
you guys,
easy for us
absolutely.
to set up. We'd love to do it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, we can look into that without a doubt.
David,
while you're tasting it and or walking your dog, whatever you do to make us thirsty and kind of jealous, Bill, I know that you there was a discussion on the internet about the number of casks available being shrunk, and people were asking why and all this stuff. And you know, as much as David is a greatest supporter and brand ambassador for GlenAllachie, and we work very close. It's two types of emails that I'm getting from from him specifically. Is one is the price hike, and another one is the shrinking the number of available single casks. I'll be honest with you, I don't read these emails at all. I just basically ignore them. But you know, I'm gonna kind of bring you into a little bit of internal things. For example, I get a manifest from David. That means that these casks that offered are approved by Billy Walker or their team that being ready to go. Even though they have like 50,000 casks, not every in each cask is ready to go. That's number one. That makes it the list much shorter. Sometimes, like in 2020, I got a manifest that says that 2005 bottles are not 2005 distillation year bottles are not available. Why? Because they were saving them for their core expression of 15-year-old. Yeah. So that makes it even shorter. As you know, your cask, as any other single casks, will require the specific dry goods, the box, the label, and all this stuff. That makes them a little bit of a headache, maybe more than a little bit of a headache. Another thing is that in order to bottle the single cask, you have to, you know, have your slot on the bottling line, and that always, you know, because it's so popular, that brings it down to a little bit even, you know, less casks available. The global freight situation is horrible, as you all know. So that's another thing that delays things. It just on and on and on. I don't want to, you know, load you with things that make this hair gray, but there's more behind this. But so, Bill, there we go. That's my next stage. Yeah, I think you're very lucky of having that, and that comes back to this connection. You know, Greg Schwartz, you know, Billy Walker, David Keir, Imepx. It's a teamwork, and it's a wonderful teamwork, because at some point you'll have this wonderful expression of this cask available for your members to enjoy.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Sam.
If I could touch on that real quick. Sorry, you guys noticed my wardrobe change. The game just started, so it's almost time to go in. Sam, I would recommend we give no casks to any individual groups so that we can bottle them all as Impex casks. That way, some of it comes to the Mid-Atlantic. But as was touched on, everybody's looking for casks nowadays. Everybody wants that single cask, that special bottling. And Bill, the fact that we were able to get our hands on this for you guys is absolutely amazing. So I just hope you guys realize that you may be one of the last private groups that gets a cask of this. So this is something.
Cheers to that.
Yeah, here. And go Pennsylvania while you're at it.
Pennsylvania is my state. What do you need?
Almost
it's
everybody.
Our state, buddy. We are Pennsylvania.
You can buy GlenAllachie in Pennsylvania on the PLCB website. Fine Wine and Good Spirits. It's all on SLO. You can go order, 10, 12, 15, maybe even the 25, which is no longer being produced. It's all available in PA. Just go on Fine Wine and Good Spirits and look it up and order it and have it sent to your local shop. Bill, if you would be nice enough to give everybody my personal Impex email in case they're having any issues finding GlenAllachie, I'll be happy to help everyone out with the issue.
Will do.
This sounds more like internal Impex meeting, but Jared showing that he's working and covering his markets. That's basically.
Yes.
Thank you.
No problem, Sam.
Okay,
Right,
thank you all so much for
hang in
letting
there with us.
Thank you,
too,
David.
Dave. We're
Thanks for your
almost
time.
done.
We've got one more question, David.
Yeah,
Are
no
there
worries.
any experimental casks waiting in the warehouses that you can talk to us about?
Well, see, Billy talks about everything. I'm a little bit more circumspect. The marketing team report to me. I get a hard time when we go on these things and spill our guts about everything that's coming. But you know what? Yes, there are. Yes, there are lots of experimental casks. Can I talk about them? Look, watch this space. Billy mentioned a few cask types. Greg asked a question about our own distillate. If I can say discreetly, join the dots and see what can watch this space. Watch this space. Mindy, I'm sorry, that's half an answer and not what you're at. But look, do you know what? It'll be ready when it's ready. To quote Billy. But yeah, there are some goodies coming out, and we'll make sure the US gets an allocation.
Beautiful.
All
All
right.
right. Greg, as we wrap up our final event with you and your team, I'd like to say it's been a pleasure working with you guys. It really has. It's been an adventure all the way along, and we hope to be involved in any future endeavors that you guys get involved with. Which reminds me, your team had some exciting news recently. You want to share that news and tell us what's next for Blacksmith and Jones Films?
Absolutely. We are very excited to announce that we've been selected for a nationwide screening on PBS. And we actually found out yesterday we are qualified for a thing called PBS Plus, which is basically it's PBS Plus. It's just a lot more support from PBS, but it's in the spring we're going to be screened across the country on a day on to be determined. But it's a huge audience for us. One day will be 10 times everybody who's seen it so far, which is we're really excited about. And so the way the movie has worked so well for the whiskey community has been incredibly personally inspiring for us. But now we're kind of obviously with PBS, we're going beyond that. That's just the general. That's the U.S. in general, and so we're really excited about it. I wish I had more details to share, but it's honestly a lot of it happened yesterday. So watch our social media, and we'll keep you updated.
Well, it's great to hear that. You guys have been working hard for a long time to get picked up by a streaming service and get your film out there to a larger audience. Hopefully we've helped you do that with your work with WBSE and our members. And again, we just really appreciate working with you guys, and we hope to be working with you in the future. And on top of all that, I think we've made a couple of good friends here as well.
Here to that.
Here, yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. You're all welcome to GlenAllachie Distillery whenever you're free and able to travel. And that is Greg. That's great news on the film. Fantastic. Absolutely great news, Alfonso. And
thank you, David.
So, thank you all for having myself.
Yes.
And Billy. It's been great.
Thank you all too.
Chad?
So on behalf of myself, Bill and Mindy, and all of WBSE and the Whiskey Network, we'd really like to thank Billy Walker, GlenAllechie Master Distiller, David Keir, Marketing Director, Greg Schwartz, Director of the Water of the Film of Life, Alphonse Palima, who I've butchered his name so many times, and I've nailed it the last couple times. So
bottom of the ninth.
Also, the president of Imepx Beverages, Sam Filmus, and Imepx Mid-Atlantic Regional Manager, Jared Card, apologize. Thank you guys for sharing this afternoon and now evening and your love of whiskey. It was a fantastic tasting. The GlenAllachie expressions were phenomenal. Don't forget to get your tickets to the Water of Life, get some bottles, order our private cask. Our GlenAllachie 12-year PX finish, it's going to be phenomenal. As you said, it's I'm just going to start calling it the Hope Diamond of the whiskey world. We'll be making a lot of posts in WBSE, our barrel pick group, the GlenAllachie Appreciation Society, and the Water of Life Facebook pages. They're going to sell out super quick. So cheers, Billy, who's no longer here, Greg, Fonz, Brad, who didn't quite make it, Sam and Jared and WBSC.
And Dave.
And Dave, I apologize. I skipped right over you, sir. So as I always like to say, remember, crack a bottle, share a pour. Cheers, everybody.
Sanchiva.
Thank you all very much. Cheers.
On behalf of Impex, I want to thank Bill Vernell, Chad, Mindy, and the whole team, as well as Greg and Alphonse. And David, thank you for joining us, and thank you for making yourself available. But of course, Billy, we love you guys. Thank you very much again.
Cheers, Sam. Such a pleasure.
Thank you, Sam.
Thanks, everybody. It's 11:15 in Northumberland, so I'm going to go and walk my dog down by the coast, see the stars, Alfonso, and then I'm going to come back to this boy. Thank you all very, very much.
David.
So if you guys could stick around for a few minutes afterwards for a little conversation, we
can do that. Yeah. Thank you, David. Thank you, Sam.
Cheers.
Thank you, the world.
Cheers, cheers.